Hello and welcome to Steve and Dave's Hidden Gems. This is our second episode in this series, and this time around we're looking at the debut album of Ambrosia, the eponymous Ambrosia album.
That's right. There
Steve,
we
why
go.
why why do we think this is a hidden gem?
Well, okay. So the Ambrosia, there we go. Um, Ambrosia sits in an interesting spot, I think. I think for most people, they are soft rock, late 70s, early 80s. You're the only
Yacht
woman,
yacht rock.
yacht rock, all that for sure. But they started off in the mid 70s as a prog rock band, a fairly ambitious prog rock band. And their prog rock.
And critically acclaimed. Um,
I think that that's fair. Yeah, I think that it's fair. I think their first two albums, both prog rockish, have a following, and their credentials as prog rock artists clearly burnished by the fact that they were working alongside Alan Parsons. And so we'll talk a little bit about Parsons' involvement in all of this in a second. But I think it is an album that gets lost in the shuffle a bit, in part because there was just one modest hit. And again, their career took a very different direction a few years later, and kind of left this prog rock notion behind. So I guess maybe we
and
start.
left some of their fans behind when they did
I
that.
think that's fair. I think that's right. Um, it's I think, right, that they did hit gold
Yes.
with their
Yes.
middle of road movement. I think that
Yeah,
was also,
at some point, you just maybe want to start making money, and I think that's
well, I think that's
legitimate.
no, I think that's right. And it's also the case that their record company, their original record company, 20th Century, folded, and they were forced to, they were looking for a deal, and they got picked up by Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers was less comfortable and less interested, frankly, with in prog rock, and so they really pushed him in a middle of the road direction, and it was, I think, beneficial for the group in the short run. And so,
Certainly for their sales.
yeah, it's hard to, I mean, it's hard to argue with the market in that regard. But these first two albums, and I think this first album in particular, is so interesting that it does sort of raise the question about what might have been. And so maybe we start right with just a brief overview of the band and try to put it into some context here. And so this is Ambrosia circa 1974. The album we're talking about was released in February of 75. The band had been gigging for a couple of years, really 3 years prior to this. On the left is Christopher North. The front and center on guitar is David Pack, who is will become sort of the face of the band. The guy on bass there in the white slacks is Joe Puerta, who is the founder of Ambrosia, and on percussion then is Burley Drummond. This is a California band, and they benefited from the fact that they were able to hear and see lots of people over the years, and there was just again something in the air. Puerta talks at length about learning to play and sort of growing up alongside lots of people who played guitars. He even talks about like people would bring guitars to recess in elementary school.
Wow.
This kind of
Wow.
thing. And
Okay.
so it was, I mean, what better place to be a musician than Southern California in the mid to late 1960s? I mean, maybe
Oh
not.
yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so it's the case that the band begins to take shape. Puerta and Pack go to the same high school, begin to get involved in cover bands there. They will be joined by North, who is like oftentimes is the case with keyboardists, is as interested in jazz as he is anything else. He's kind of an experimental player. The
And
last person
he comes
yeah,
and goes as the group
that's right.
develops and moves
No,
on.
no, no, that's exactly right. And the last person to join again is Drummond, who is it also seems to be the case. It is he's as interested in world rhythms as he is anything conventional and Western. And they mold they mold well. They again gig for several years. They're playing in, of course, Puerta's parents' living room, and all these stories. They famously had a an encounter with Herb Albert at the Hollywood Bowl. Had a chance to play for the A&M folks, who took a pass on him. But I think it does suggest that they did have something, and it was they were slightly a cut above the other young bands in the area.
Well, and I think A&M probably would have been a good fit for them.
Well, I think so. I think so too, Dave. That's interesting you mentioned that. I was just thinking about that the other day that that's a label that was famously nurturing to young artists and quite patient. Um, they had precious few progressive bands in their stable,
This is true.
but nevertheless, I think it could have been useful. One of the things that Puerta says really sort of changed their direction was not a chance encounter, but they heard a fairly unknown band, King Crimson, and that really turned their heads. And from Puerta's perspective, he said it really forced him to get a bit more serious and candidly really a bit more ambitious in terms of what they were putting together. And so
Yeah.
I think it's a big jump to look at an album like this and think, well, this is influenced by King Crimson, but there is, the sense of ambition, I think, is
Yeah.
was placed in their
Yeah,
midst.
what's possible for a
Yeah,
band?
I think that's it. And so it's the Ambrosia in this era is an interesting mix of progressive rock, as well as then sort of Beach Boy infused kind of harmonies. I mean, it's
Speaking of influences,
right. I mean, how could you not be influenced by the Beach Boys living and growing up in California
yeah.
in this era? They were, and this I think is, I mean, I think this is sort of one of the underplayed aspects of the Beach Boys, isn't it? Is that they were so marvelously influential to such a wide variety of folks that, I mean, for example, The Who uh, saw themselves as, almost a kind of Beach Boys cover band on some level. They really were powerfully influenced by the Beach Boys. But
And
okay,
I
so the
find that
Ambrosia.
strange. I find that stranger than the Beach Boys Beatles connection.
Yeah, it's no the
Not
Who.
something that I would
No,
necessarily.
but the Who, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Moon in particular was completely taken with the Beach Boys, but I mean, who wouldn't be? And so it's also the case, right, that it's a small world, and they run into famous folks and get help, really along the way. And I think the key person here for them is the record man Russ Regan. And Russ Regan is the head of 20th Century Records. And we talked about a 20th Century Records project earlier when we talked about the All This and World War II
Yeah.
project.
Yeah.
It's maybe
I knew the name sounded familiar.
ill-fated, and in fact, Ambrosia appears on that. But
Yes.
Russ Regan really took a shine to Ambrosia, and was he Puerto talks about him being really their champion.
Okay.
And everything changed, of course, for them when Reagan was forced to dismantle 20th century in the late 70s, and they were, set adrift looking for a record deal. Okay, but here's the thing about Reagan. Not only was he interested in the band, but he was interested in connecting them with a young man who he had just signed in England, a guy by the name of Alan Parsons. And so Parsons will travel to California to work with the band, and it is well, it's a productive encounter. Now, Parsons is just starting his kind of artistic phase, right? And so Parsons famously was involved in the Beatles, both the Abbey Road and Let It Be projects. He also, of course, was involved in Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. And he'll be involved with some other projects as well. I think it's fair to say that in this era, he might be one of the most important figures in the recording industry in terms of sort of the technical aspect. He is an engineer's engineer, um, learning at the feet of Jeff Emmerich and Alan and George Martin, for example.
Yeah.
And so they were freaking thrilled that Parsons was interested in it. And they Parsons heard the band, heard a rough tape of the band's playing, and thought it was worth his while, and traveled to California. Now, it is also the case that Parsons was also starting his own musical adventure with the Parsons Project. He would be paired with Eric Wolfsong, and they would soon be recording his first album, right? The Tales of Mystery and Imagination, which actually Ambrosia plays on. And so actually Ambrosia is the band on the first cut, the Raven on that. And so there's a there
Isn't Joe Huerta, doesn't he work with Alan Parsons over several decades? It
well,
seems like
David Pack does. David
David
Pack
Pack.
does.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
David
right.
Pack does. There's definitely a link there. In fact, Pack toured with Parsons for a time at the end of the 20th century. It's right. So there's a alliance there. But this is sort of their initial encounter. And so it's all sort of kind of kind of falling together in an interesting sort of way. It's a couple things. We'll talk about some of the songs in a second, but one of the things that came from this encounter and this working relationship is that this is a terrific sounding album, and people recognize that immediately. And so the it was nominated, of course, for the best engineered non-classical album in 1976. And so so Alan Parsons is gets the nod. Other it's unbelievable. So other albums in this would be a Vanelli album, a singer from Canada, a Thelma Houston album, an R&B, the original soundtrack, that is the 10cc album with I'm Not in Love. That's tough competition.
That's tough
But
competition.
none of those three albums win, nor does the Ambrosia album win. The winner for the best engineered album, non-classical, in 1976 is Janis Ian's Between the Lines. It beats
With
out,
17?
yeah, at 17.
Yeah.
It beats out I'm Not in Love.
Yeah.
How's that even possible?
I know at 17 from her, so I have no idea what the
Well, it's, I mean,
games
and at
sound
17,
like,
it's a beautifully,
but I'm Not
yeah.
in Love is a masterpiece of engineering.
Yes, it is a masterpiece. Even if the rest of the damn album was static, I think that would stand alone.
Yeah.
And so the other piece of this, and one of the reasons that we're going to talk about this morning is, well, it sounds so great, and it is a masterpiece in terms of engineering. You
Well,
can,
let me just say that Alan Parsons is clearly part of that equation. But the recording studio, um,
fair point. Yeah, good.
Mama Joe's,
Mama Joe's.
which was set up by the producer of this album, Freddie Pirro, in 1970,
Yep.
um, was that the sound system was built by Vincent van Hoff, a famed acoustician,
Statistician. Yeah.
and he was specifically hired to design the control room. And this studio got a reputation for being where you want it to be if you're serious about your sound.
So yeah,
And
I
Alan
think, yeah.
Parsons did a lot of work there after this album as well. I think this was the first one that he did there, but he came back again and again.
Yeah, this is I think you raise a really important point here. And I think it's also the case that uh, there was a lot to work with at Mama Joe's, and Parsons was bringing real technical acumen with him to England. This is an era, right, where this is still cut and splice. We're decades away from Pro Tools or anything like that. And so there's a certain kind of manual dexterity that's needed, and just there's a craftsmanship, right? There's a craftsmanship to this. And so Parsons, along with Mama Joe's, is really a kind of perfect combination. I mean, it's all sort of building to something that should be actually quite interesting, right? And I think it's rare that a young band gets this kind of opportunity. Again, they're just getting started. They're just coming out of the
Yeah.
starting gate. So it's unbelievable. All right, so let's talk, if we could, for a couple of minutes about some of the songs here. And there are really sort of two songs that I think sort of jump from the album. And let's talk
Yeah.
about maybe the album's opener, which is Nice, Nice, Very Nice. And I think this will give us a chance to talk about one Kurt Vonnegut. So as the story goes, Puerta was reading Cat's Cradle, um, and was really taken with much of what he came across there. And he thought, in fact, part of what Vonnegut was putting together was quite lyrical. And so I mean, he basically just pulls, and it's just basically word for word, something from The Cat's Cradle in a section from the so-called 53rd Calypso section from the Book of
A
the
Bokonon poem.
Bokonon. And so this will, I mean, I think maybe we should just talk about Cat's Cradle for a second and then
Yeah.
about Vonnegut as well. I'll just say this, I think I'm always pleased when people are reading, and I'm always pleased when people are reading Vonnegut. And I do think it says something about Puerta that he actually is, kind of he's reading Vonnegut. He's got a copy of Vonnegut in, his backpack or whatever. But Vonnegut operates in a very interesting place in the culture in the mid 1970s. And can you talk a little bit about I mean, why Vonnegut is so significant, do you think, at this moment?
Whew. Well, his breakthrough was basically Slaughterhouse-Five, right?
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's right.
And
Although, yeah,
and he just has such a quirky approach to fiction that I think just kind of appealed to a quirky generation. Maybe it's that simple.
I,
What's your take on
I
this?
definitely think that the fact that he's so unconventional um, is appealing, particularly to young people. He's also, I think, a person who is stridently anti-authoritarian. He's also a very, very much anti-war. This is clearly an era where this is connecting with lots of young people. He's also a kind of, a kind of explorer in his own way, and I think he's clearly searching for something in his work, it seems, in terms of faith and belonging. And I think for a lot of young people, that really connects. There's just, there's a lot there.
And what being human is about, what it
Yes.
means to be a human being, and how do we cope with that existence? And he's not cynical, but
No, he's not cynical.
he's not also not optimistic.
Well, that's for
Um,
sure. No, he's
he
not
has
optimistic.
so
Um,
there's this it's a kind of a
he,
strange mix.
it's a strange mix. He is just sort of, defiantly cheerful, and and so the Cat's Cradle book. You're right. I think it's clear that Vonnegut peaks with Slaughterhouse-Five. That's where he's at his zenith. Slaughterhouse-Five, and I think Breakfast of Champions also really connected with the larger public.
Yeah,
I think, though, this book published, Cat's Cradle published in the early '60s. In many ways, it's his most fully realized book. I think it's in many ways it's his densest and most Vonnegut-esque book because he explores so many of his themes so deeply in this book. The whole notion of faith and belonging and the Carras and the Granfalloons and all that is explored is actually, in some real depth here. Um,
can I just make just a personal comment?
yeah,
Because I I remember, or in my mind, Cat's Cradle was one of my favorite
yep,
novels of
me
his.
too. Me too. Yeah.
And then, but I try to think, all right, what was it about? And then I went and Googled, okay, what was, because I
This
didn't
is,
remember.
yeah.
And I read this description, and I couldn't remember a damn thing about this story. I
Come
thought,
on, man.
what? There was one scene where I said, okay, I remember reading that. So I guess I did read it, but everything else was gone. There's a
It's
scene with a couple in the airplane that was like they had their own little personal universe
yeah.
together. The couple
Yes.
as a, and I remembered that and made an impression on me back in the day. And that's the only thing that I
It's
have a clear memory of from this book. But I
I
remember
think
having loved it.
yes,
Very
it
strange.
it's there is a lot in this book that is, I mean, it's actually, I think, in many ways, his bleakest book. And there's an apocalyptic quality. It's the Ice
Yes.
Nine. I mean, the world goes to shit at the end of the book. But again, this is the book where he really starts to play with the whole notion of granfalloons and caresses and the whole, the Hoosier and who you love and who are you with and who are you really, all this stuff. It's and again, it's a fascinating book. And I think from Vonnegut's perspective, he writes about this in Palm Sunday, that he thinks it's his best book alongside Slaughterhouse Five. And I think that's probably, I mean, that's I wouldn't push against the great man, but he's a very interesting figure in this time. So here's the thing. So they put this they put this song to music. And at some point, right, somebody goes, "Well, don't you think we need to get his permission? This is unbelievable." And so they contact him,
Uh-huh.
and I think to Vonnegut's credit, he listens to the song and approves, and in fact sends back a letter that is more than just like you have my permission, but he also talks about the fact that making music is important, and it might be the one art that really is worth a damn in the end. And so he's
Can I
incredibly
just
effusive. Please go
give
ahead.
that
Yeah,
quotation?
yeah,
Um, Supposedly, after hearing the song on the radio, he writes to the band,
yes,
quote, I myself am crazy about our song, of course, but what do I know, and why wouldn't I be? This much I have always known anyway. Music is the only art that's really worth a damn.
yeah.
I envy you guys. End quote. So yeah, that's really, really nice.
That's great. And I think it is one of the couple of songs here that really kind of pop on the album. And so let's just listen to
Yeah.
a brief cut here, give us all a sense of it.
Oh, a sleeping drunkard up in Central Park, or the lion hunter in the jungle dark, or the Chinese dentist, or the British Queen. They are fit together in the same machine. Nice, nice, very nice, 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 very nice. So many people in the same divide.
There we go. It's a terrific number. One of the
Yeah.
better songs that the band ever puts together, and it's I think he does. They do good by Vonnegut. It does seem odd to me that other bands didn't try this.
Well, and you can certainly imagine it has that island feeling to it too.
I totally agree. Yeah, that's
Right.
no, that's
So,
exactly right. So it's the perfect. It is it's a kind of perfect melding of music and lyrics here in terms of the a Vonnegut fan. And again, so it leads the album. It makes a lot of sense that it does. We don't need to listen to every cut here. I think though there are a couple of cuts that really I think pop. Time Waits for No One is Parsons at his sort of intricate best. He brings, among other things, there are all sorts of little kind of hidden gems, if you will, little Easter eggs baked into the recording process in this particular song, right? There's lots of clocks, and it's reminiscent of his work with Pink Floyd. And this is one of those albums that I think benefits from headphones. There's just a lot here, and you get a sense of his it's almost kind of a mad scientist feel to it, and some of these. But the big hit from the album is "Holding On to Yesterday," the third cut. "Holding On to Yesterday" is the song that Puerta had started and had in his pocket for I think for a long time. Um, David Pack added uh, a certain kind of sheen to it that really helped the song terrifically. This song also features Daniel Kobayaka on violin, and the violin is it's very atmospheric here. They will work with Kobayaka at several points along the way. Holding On to Yesterday is the band's sort of first hit. It's the only real hit that comes from the album. It peaked 17 on the pop charts and
Mhm.
a number 46 on adult contemporary. And I guess for many people, this is, I mean, when they think about Ambrosia from this era, this is the song.
Right.
Melancholy. It's yeah, it's worth listening to.
Well, I keep holding on to yesterday. I keep holding on enough to say that I'm wrong. I keep thinking that I'm lonely, but it's only missing you
You know,
inside.
it's good to have a vocalist as strong as David Pack in your band. It's also good to have a vocalist who is as good looking as David Pack. And so he takes a star turn at several points along the way here, and of course, eventually he becomes kind of the face of the band. But Holding On to Yesterday is again sort of the big single here. The
Right.
album is full of sort of ambition and experimentation. There are a couple of songs like Mama Frog, which is clearly a kind of group effort and a kind of almost kind of atonal kind of I don't know. It's very much of the time. Every band threw something like this on an album. Oh, let's try this. This sounds great, man. It's one of those things I don't think that holds up particularly well. But I think the last song on the album, it is in its own way sort of sun-drenched. It is grandiose. Is it a little indulgent? Sure. But I think it's a bit of sort of Brian Wilson meets prog rock. And so I think Drink of Water, a song that the band put together as a collective effort, a collective writing effort, is a highlight of sorts. And so let's listen to just a brief cut of that here. Drink of Water, which I think has definite kind of Beach Boys influences here.
I went out to get a drink of water, but I saw an ocean far away. I thought of how much beyond awaits me. Foolishly, it turned my head the other way. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Just a little taste of that. Strong harmonies in this group. The band could sing, certainly when they were young men, they could really sing. And again, they benefit from the masterful production of Alan Parsons. Um, it's one of those moments where, it's a kind of what might have been, had the record company been able to stay together and they've been able to sort of pursue this vision, perhaps even alongside Parsons. Um, the band might have been, something akin to a kind of progressive American progressive rock band. There weren't very many of them, but they could have fit that niche, but that's not what happened, and they were forced to sort of scramble a couple of years later, and they became a kind of middle of the road band. And so, I think for a lot of reasons, right? I think that the first Ambrosia, the self-titled uh, debut, is a kind of hidden gem, and it's clearly worth pursuing. And it's again one of those records that if you have headphones, it's worth it. So there we go. Dave, you got a couple thoughts here in conclusion, and want to take us home.
Well, yeah, I just think it's really interesting how a band can make that kind of evolution from
Right.
uh, really a very ambitious sort of thing. I mean, progressive rock is not for sissies.
No, no, it's no. You take the leap. Yeah,
And then at some point you just say, a little bit simpler and straight to the point is also not bad
there we
because,
go.
people can relate to that and they'll buy those records, and that's what ended up happening.
That's exactly right. And so, right, I think that their records from the late 70s and 80s completely eclipsed the earlier work, but this earlier work is, well, it's definitely worth looking up.
They took some fans with them, I mean that happened
They
like with
did.
the Bee Gees as well.
That's true. That's true.
But yeah, there were a few who saw that as kind of a
Yeah, they left.
betrayal of
Yeah, betrayal, I think, is the word. And I think,
principles.
yeah, I think those fans, they left those fans behind. And if anything, those early fans, jumped over and followed Parsons' career. Um, and that was, I think, a productive path as well. And
Right,
so again,
right.
it's an interesting record, and it's definitely worth looking for. And for us, it's a kind of hidden gem.
Yeah. Um, okay. If you enjoyed this video, we hope you did, give us a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, you can do that right here. You can watch the first Hidden Gems video right up here. And as always, you'll want to listen to the playlist. You'll have a chance to experience what the first Ambrosia album actually sounded like. You can do that right here.
Absolutely. And keep in mind that we are on Blue Sky. We're posting new content every day, and so we hope we see you there. So until next time, see you soon.
Bye-bye.